Hey everyone, it's Calvin, also known as Romer, and today I'm going to be talking about something that is actually near and dear to my heart. A console that honestly pretty much got me into video games for the rest of my life. I kind of skipped the PS1 generation, not because I didn't have it, we had it in my house, but more just because I didn't own that console myself. I was always just kind of either watching my brother play or playing whatever he let me play at the time. Of course, later on I would go back and play a bunch of PlayStation 1 games, but it wasn't until a few years afterwards when I realized you could actually do backwards compatibility with this current console I'm going to be talking about today, and that is the PlayStation 2. I love this console, but today I'm going to be talking about a bunch of games that I think are really great that I own for the PlayStation 2. Now, it's not all of my PlayStation 2 games, and also I'm not going to be showing off some obvious ones. I think a lot of people know that I love Shadow of the Colossus. They know that I love Final Fantasy X. They're my top 2 favorite games of all time. No need to show those off, but today I'm going to be showing off some that you might not know that I have or might not know that I love. Some are hidden gems, some are obvious ones. Let's do this. I don't think many PlayStation 2 lists are complete unless you talk about Simpsons Hit and Run. Simpsons Hit and Run is kind of a mixture of Super Mario 64, Grand Theft Auto, and like Crazy Taxi. It is an open world or open overworld type level where you go around doing certain missions in your car. You can get out your car then, of course, and then like hop over to different places, collect items. But the main missions in these games kind of center around you driving about the place, driving from destination to destination, doing races. But I think the reason why most people love this game and kind of want to return to form with Simpsons games because of this is because of how the overworld works. You are traveling around Springfield, you are visiting some of your favorite characters, some of your favorite places. In some cases, you can even go inside those places. And really, we haven't gotten a Simpsons game like that since. You'll hear a lot of people talking about how they want a remaster for the game, and luckily, the love for this game is still very much alive. Now, I heard that a remaster of this game would actually be very difficult because it would fall on, I believe, on Disney to decide now, because I'm pretty sure that anyone who is involved with this game would love to do it, but it all revolves around who owns The Simpsons right now and would it be profitable for them, and would it be a good idea? And I think it would be. I think a remaster or remake of Simpsons Hit and Run would be fantastic. Even a port to modern consoles would be great too, because for some people it is quite hard to find a copy of this. Next up is YuGiOh GX Tag Force Evolution, I believe it's called. Yes, it is. This is a fantastic game, and it's not a fantastic game, I think, in a general sense. I think a lot of people might play this and find it to be pretty average, but for a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, the idea of being able to live on Duel Academy Island was a dream come true. A lot of people like me who grew up in both the Yu-Gi-Oh, the first seasons, the original seasons, and also in the GX era, loved GX to death. I know a lot of people don't like it. I know a lot of people really just don't like GX. But for me, it was a great era, and it was actually one of the most fun eras for the card game as well, because we brought a lot more diversity in our fusions, which I think that fusions were kind of lacking in the original series. I don't think they were as interesting. Even in the show, fusion monsters were sometimes just not even called fusion monsters, only when it kind of like suited the plot. This game itself, though, is a lot of fun. It's kind of complicated in some cases, it's kind of convoluted, but the best part about this game is you can build up your own cards, your own deck, you can travel around Duel Academy Island and just duel people. And also there are tag duels in this, which actually work rather well. I think it's actually cool to have a tag duel in this sense, or have tag duels in a game. I love it to death. One of my least favorite things about the case of this is how some companies will put like this big awful sticker on the case and it's really hard to get off. But Tekken 5 in itself is another fantastic game. It's a great fighting game, and the Tekken series is one of my favorites. What's great about Tekken 5 though is that it came with Tekken 1, 2, and 3 installed on the disc as well. This is something that they don't really do anymore, that most game companies don't do anymore. And I would like to see more of it, like just giving away old games for free along with their newer games. Some companies still do it, but not all. Tekken is a great fighting game. It's one of my I think it's my favorite fighting game of all time, but mostly it's because I care about the characters as well as the story. And also the fighting mechanics too. I've had so much fun with this game. I remember I had it on the PSP and I used to play it up and down from school. Anywhere I went, I brought my PSP and I played this game. It's utterly fantastic to me. Let's keep going through the Tekken games. Now we have Tekken 4. Tekken 4 is my favorite fighting game of all time, and it's actually my top 10 favorite games of all time. Another game, this is the first game I got for the PlayStation 2, so you can imagine how much it actually means to me. I I remember getting this for my birthday along with my PlayStation 2, and one of the most special things about it was I didn't have a memory card, so I had to continue to unlock the characters over and over again. But I didn't mind because I loved the story, I loved the characters, I fell in love with the characters in this game, and they really developed their stories beyond what was in Tekken 3. Tekken 3 is still one of the most amazing games of all time, but I truly believe that this is my favorite Tekken game. Believe it or not, in terms of like the overall fan base of Tekken, it's their least favorite because the actual fighting game mechanics and the level terrain that you fought on was not ideal for a tournament-based setting, or even like for some people to have fun with this game as well. One-on-one, it was kind of difficult because sometimes you would lose a fight and it wouldn't even be your fault. It would be the terrain's fault, and that's not something that's good in a fighting game. I believe this is kind of the black sheep, but I love it anyway. The last Tekken game here is Tekken Tag Tournament. Pretty much I can say the same about this game that I can say about every other Tekken game, but in this the music is at its peak. This is the peak of the music of the Tekken series in my opinion. So good. They had like every character, even dead characters. It's non-canon, so they can bring back anyone they want. Again, Harada has so much respect for this series, so he doesn't like to bring back dead characters, which I love. But like my favorite character of all time in Tekken is in this, and that's Jun Kazama. And yeah, it's a really fun fighting game. Like again, it's the same thing as the other Tekken games, but I think that the Tekken games have kind of evolved mechanically as time has gone on, and in more fun. I think a lot of people have more fun with the newer games. For me, these games are just classics. I can play them any day. A lot of the Smackdown vs. Raw games, such as Smackdown vs. Raw 2007, really are special. It's an era for video games with wrestling that will never be matched again. We're hoping that in some way that the WWE games can come back to this form, but it's looking very unlikely as time goes on. This was an era where video games were at their peak of like ideas. Everyone was having ideas for video games, and even in wrestling games. You have stuff like GM mode, the story mode, which all were interesting. Unlocking characters felt good. It didn't feel like you were going through the motions unlocking characters. And overall, the exhibition matches were the most fun. We're at their peak during this era. It's not just with Smackdown vs. Raw 2007. Like, most of the Smackdown vs. Raw games up until a point were just amazing. And the Smackdown games too. I hope that at some stage they can get back to this stage with Smackdown vs. Raw. Or not Smackdown vs. Raw, but WWE 2K. But again, it's looking unlikely. W2K20, I have it myself. I bought it for very cheap. Even though they fixed a lot of it, there's still so much of that game that is kind of just like, and I don't say this about video games often, but this is like an insult. It's like such an insult to like games like this, and I don't like to act like that because I feel like insulting people in video games is hard when it's a choice to buy a video game. But in this sense, they released this game knowing full well that it was banjaxed, it was broken, and it's still broken in a lot of ways, and it doesn't even compare to the older games. I don't know how many people have heard of Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, but if you haven't, you should probably play it. This is kind of like a JRPG mixed with a Lord of the Rings world, the Lord of the Rings world. I played this game to death as a kid. I played this game again when I was older. It didn't hold up as much, I'll be completely honest, but I think the world itself is what's most exciting about this. They do have to stretch the canon a bit and stretch the stories a little bit to actually make it work. Like, you will meet some of the characters, like you meet Gandalf on the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, which is kind of funny because the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, if you remember, is a narrow walkway, probably about the length of a person, or the width of a normal sized person, and in the game they fit like 4 people on it just because they want them to be there and they want the characters to fit into the story. They changed the canon a lot in this game, but it's still a fun game. A lot of variety, I think, with the characters. There could have been a bit more, but I think if you love Lord of the Rings, you'd love this game. This is my original copy of Canis Catamena, which is why it's actually pretty banjaxed. It's one of the earliest PlayStation 2 games I got as well, but I've given this game on loan out to so many people originally that the copy just kept coming back damaged. And at the time, I didn't care as much about my cases because I was just like, well, I'm giving you a loan of a game. You give me a loan of a game. It just worked. But I personally find that this game is one of the most fun of all time. I played this game in the space of a week when I originally got it. I remember huddled around with my friends and we were all laughing at the dirty jokes and like the little crazy stuff that you can do in this game. Because as a kid, this type of humor was the funniest shit in the world. And it's still kind of funny. It's still so creative. I still think it's the best Rockstar game to date. And I know a lot of people have different feelings now. I love Red Dead 2 before anyone says it. I love Red Dead 2. But to me, this is the best Rockstar game to date. You play as a young kid named Jimmy Hopkins, basically going through a year of school, but he has to deal with like some over-exaggerated bullies, whether it be the greasers, the jocks, or just like the basic bullies themselves. You have to deal with all these really cool creative characters and really cool creative levels, to the point that it's never one stage feels boring or drawn out or over the top. It always feels like it fits within that world and in that world's canon. And I know that's a word that people throw around, the word canon, but I feel like it works in this sense because this world is so crazy, but they just make it goddamn work. It's very violent, but it's very fun. It's a cool world to explore. We don't get many of these games anymore. I would really like for a second one. And the last game on this list, and again, it's not the last game that I own. I have a bunch more that I'd love to show off at some point. I'm going to be making a bunch of lists of like, oh, games, PS2 games that I'd love to do with this, or PS2 games that are like this. I want to keep doing this type of stuff, especially with all the games that I own, and even games that I don't own as well. But Shadow of Memories is the most underrated game I've ever played. It's not, people look at it, and I remember showing it off to people, and they're like, oh, is this game kind of like too bad, or so bad that it's good? But no, it's so good that it's good. It's a really fantastic game. And I think that it will mess with a lot of people's heads still. I think the story is interesting enough. I think the actual gameplay mechanics are still interesting enough. I think that the place that you have to explore in this game is small, it's compact, but because it's so compact, it actually makes it a little bit more livable and homely. It feels like this place becomes more and more important as time goes on, because you learn the history of this place, you learn the history of the people that live in the place, and you even learn some of their great backstories of the characters you see here. This is a game about time travel. You are murdered at the start of this game, and a creature basically tells you, I will let you solve your own murder. I will bring you back and let you solve your own murder. Of course, there is some kind of catch. There's always a catch. And you have to go out and find your own murder. You're given kind of a time frame of how to, like, find your, or how long you have until you can find your murderer. Like, let's say you're going to be murdered at 3 o'clock in the evening. You have to find out, or find a way to not be murdered by 3 o'clock while you're investigating. So let's say in the first stages, I'm not going to spoil everything, but I'll talk about, like, one of the ways you stop it. I remember going to this street performer and finding a street performer, knowing that this killer wouldn't kill me in a group. So I went around and told everyone, there's a street performer performing in the town square at 3 o'clock. You go there at 3 o'clock and there's a bunch of people there, so you cannot be killed at that point in time. It's really, really ingenious. There's other crazy ones as well that like may not work for some people, but I think they're really fun. Like, you meet a movie producer at one point, and he's like, I'm going to be making this movie or whatever about romance. And these girls show up to this movie poster like earlier on, and they're like, oh, this movie looks stupid, and they walk away and don't even look at the poster anymore. You can go back in time, talk to this guy and say, hey, you should make a space or a movie about time travel, about a guy solving his own murder. And he's like, that sounds so cool. You go into the future, and that movie is being made, and that poster's there, so those girls are way more interested in that movie right now, and a load of people gather around and go, oh, look at the movie poster, and you survive for another bit as well. Really ingenious, really fantastic. The vibes and music are great too. I highly recommend, if you can get your hands on this game, to play it. So that was a bunch of PS2 games that I honestly think are pretty good. Some of them, again, hidden gems, some of them very well known, some of them very beloved. But overall, I think they're actually really fantastic games. It's a fantastic system. We're going to be talking about this system and other systems, whether it be the 3DS, the Wii U, or even like the Nintendo Switch or the PlayStation 4. I want to keep going on talking about stuff because every once in a while, of course, I am a Let's Play channel, so of course it's not going to always fit. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a hat, I probably said at the start of the video, I'm having a bad hair day and I didn't want to get on camera with my bad hair. And also, I have a new light, so I'm kind of testing it out. I'm trying to see which levels are going to be good for this and whether it's going to make the camera look a little bit better. But we'll see as time goes on. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye. Rock Band!